Oh, thank you so much.
Here we go. Welcome. Welcome to this episode of the Skirball Tapes. I am Catherine Stimson, your host. And as you know, the theme of the Skirball Tapes is the radical imagination in time present. And today I am thrilled to have as our guest the artist, Şerife Wong, known as Sherry Wong. And I will be speaking to her as Sherry, but Şerife is the first name. Sherry stands and moves in a swirling confluence of technology, art, and social justice. And she's here as an artist, responding to our moment, her moment. So Sherry, welcome. Now, I have many questions for you, and so I'm sure will our audience. But first, here's the protocol for asking questions. Now, everybody who's kind enough to be here, down at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A. Put your questions there, please. Sherry and I will talk for 40 to 45 minutes. And she said earlier, as we were planning this session, it's really sort of packed. And it is, because there's so much to think about. We will then select questions and put them in the chat. And we will read the questions from the chat. And at that point, Sherry will talk with you. As usual, we will end with thanks and a hard stop on the hour, which will be 4 p.m. in New York. And for Sherry, who is in Hawaii, working on her latest project, it is 10 a.m. That's the hard stop time. So here we go. Sherry, thank you again for joining the Skirball Tapes. And when I've looked at your art and your work as an artist, I keep asking, how did you become an artist? You could have gone in so many directions. So what is your, forgive the expression, what is your origin story as an artist? Were you a New Yorker? Were you in Hawaii? Were you in Turkey? Where did the story of Şerife Wong begin as an artist?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think yes to all of those. My origin begins right here in Hawaii. And I'm going to do this because I've never gotten to do this before, but land recognition. I am in my ancestral homelands of the Kanaka Maoli people. And it's the first time I've gotten to ever be able to say that on a video on the internet. So I'm super proud. But my father is from here and I grew up in Turkey. And so all my work got steeped with the stories and history of those places. I've always wanted to be an artist like many people, but I didn't think it was a viable career path, right, until college. So I think primarily my
And you went to
story,
women's college, did you not?
Smith College.
Yes, very good.
But it's a story of, I think, recognition, because at college, my art professor, Roger Boyce, he recognized some of the work I was doing as art, which I wasn't aware of, because they were like funny little flyers and performance pieces. And I thought that was just stuff I was doing as a joke. And he introduced me to Fluxus and Situationist art movements. And that kind of instigated my move to New York, where I became a painter. And then there was a big art market crash. My career sort of collapsed, and I ended up moving to San Francisco, and my art took on new types of meaning. And I didn't recognize it again as art until I had self-recognition later on, which came only this year.
So this is the year in which you say, I am an artist.
I am an artist. Yeah, I am an artist again. It's all just, I've always been an artist. I've never stopped being an artist.
But that question of self-recognition is so important. But when did you connect with AI? Now, AI has been around for a long time. The basic research for it was done in the 1980s before you were born, Sherry. So when did you start making connections, and what kind of connections were they?
So, my path back into art was back through AI. I was working at an art residency at Autodesk at a place called Pier 9, which is the future of making things, very futuristic. They had robots and AI and lasers and 3D printers. And I started getting concerned as it was artists using these tools, so they were making really wonderful, beautiful things. But it I had some questions because the first thing that I noticed with AI was that it could do creative things. It could make designs. And that made me think about jobs. Was it going to displace human workers? So I got concerned for the ethics of it, and I started asking questions. I hosted dinner parties at my workplace for ethics of AI and emerging technologies. Like, what could go wrong? What kind of rules should we have?
Were you considered a buzz killer?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. I was just starting out, so I didn't have a lot of places to hold on to. And I met this woman called Margaret Levy at Stanford, and I was telling her, someone should really do something about this AI. We need ethics. And she's like, people are, you just don't know who they are. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh. And that started off a whole journey of I need to find out. I need to do my homework and learn who else is working on these things. And
Can I ask you a really stupid question?
great.
What is AI? I mean, I read about it. I have Copilot on my computer now, but every time I try to define it, and I know it wasn't born yesterday, I feel my brain slipping away from me. So how would you define AI? You're sitting there in San Francisco. You're
Mhm.
beginning to ask questions. How did you define it?
My definition has changed. That's because it is not a stable, defined thing. And the question, what is AI, is probably not the dumbest, but the smartest question one can ask, because in that question is all the problems, all the confusion. And it's purposely confusing, I think, because the simplest way to explain AI is to think of it as a marketing term. Now, people have, it's a big umbrella term, so they use it for lots of different things. They use it for statistical tools that are calculating um, what could happen, or helping people make decisions. But really, the term is kind of just plopped onto things. And there's not a agreed upon definition. Even in legal terms, they argue and they go back, they make mistakes about it. And it really starts from its roots, like the term artificial intelligence comes from the 50s. There was a artificial intelligence conference at Dartmouth in 1956. But the first use of the term actually is from its grant application the year before. That was John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, Nathaniel Rochester, and Cloud Shannon, right? So they're writing this grant application and they're like, we need to get money. What should we do? And I read all their letters and they're discussing what to call it. And like Shannon, he's like, oh, it's too flashy. People aren't going to buy it, And McCarthy, he didn't want to use he didn't want to use the term cybernetics, which is what that field used to be called, because he had some issues with the guy Norbert Wiener. He used cybernetics, right? So it was a lot of like personal drama and marketing. Because I write grants too, right? You're trying to get funding for your idea. And so
Right.
that term, artificial intelligence, it sounds really good. It sounds monumental and impressive. And it sounds that way to us. Like we have all these movies and we've always had them. We've had the story of Pinocchio, like giving life, creating something in our own image. It's this ancient thing, and it evokes that imagination, makes it real for us, which is very confusing because it's just like math and algorithms.
But this is okay. This is very helpful to me. If I am confused, I should be confused because I can't take anything for granted. But you're also so interested and you write about and talk about this symbiotic relationship of science, art, and technology. And you seem to be not utopian, because I won't insult you with that oversimplification, but you seem to see something very beautiful and you seem to call for collaborations between science, art, and technology on a daily basis. Or have I misunderstood you?
No, I don't see that too much of a difference between, I think art between those terms. I think that artists are doing a type of science, they're doing a type of technology. I think technology can be considered a type of art. I blend these things because, I grew up in Turkey with a lot of Greek history as well. And like the word techne means like a boat or craft in Turkey. And it's putting stuff into action, like putting things into the world. And episteme, the thinking, that was seen as separate. But I think with AI, those things, especially, you can see how they're really blended. Like and that confusion that we were talking about, like the
Yeah.
imaginary of this is a technical thing and this is separate. They're made up human beliefs that we've categorized the world in certain ways. But in reality, like those are just human categorizations, and the capacities of what we have, the capacities of the tool, our fantasies or our beliefs, they are a lot more murky and the soup is a lot muddier.
In your own artistic practice, and I would like to talk about a beautiful thing called the origin of the clouds. But you don't actually use AI in your own artistic practice, do you? Or have I misunderstood again?
I don't. The only time I do use it is for in my art is for investigating or interrogating the tool so I understand it better. So in this piece, I'm using a AI tool called Dolly from OpenAI that also makes ChatGPT, and this tool creates images. So I'm playing around with it, typing in like and Googling for Islamic clouds in the Ottoman style, trying to get pictures of it. And what I'm receiving back is a sort of flattening of that entire art style. So I get kind of confused when I'm using it because I don't know where their references are. So I got inspired to make this piece because I had COVID and I had gotten a lot of brain fog, and I was trying to take a little break and go back to just doing some art and relaxing. And I took an Ottoman art class, and they were teaching us how to do all those beautiful florals that are on the roofs of mosques, or illustrations, right? And they're algorithmic, and that is just a rule, right? Like if this flower branch goes left, then the next one needs to go right. And I was like, oh, that reminds me a lot of like what's going on with AI, right? This is a type of AI actually. And from there, I started playing with those tools and I was comparing and contrasting it. And it was so different because in my class, my teacher teaches us that we have to have respect for the origin of things, where things come from. So she says, hey, my teacher's name was this, their teacher's name was that. There's a lineage, you know exactly who you've learned from, and you have to get permission to use. You're like, may I do this? And they tell you you're not ready. You can't do that yet. You have to learn this first, right? But with AI, that lineage and that caretaking is broken because you don't know where all those pictures are coming
Uh,
from. Because what the AI tool is doing is training on the internet, all the millions and millions of images, and it doesn't tell you where it comes from. It's almost impossible because there's millions of people it comes from. But there's a disconnection instead of a watering of the relationships that we have to each other.
but also in the origin of the clouds, and the detail is exquisite, and I'm not sure that a shared screen. I hope the shared screen showed some of the exquisiteness of the detail. But weren't you also trying to look at tradition and bring in Turkish traditions into that piece, and also some of the traditions of the Uyghurs
Mhm.
and other uh, peoples of that region? Weren't you trying to
Mhm.
recapture a deep past as well?
Yeah, by working on that piece, I got to connect to my own history because I think of research as my art form now. And the research was the art. So as I looked into what was going on with I researched the history of drawing clouds because it's a specific form of cloud. There's a little spiral, you can imagine it's got a little spiral at the end. And that motif is ancient. It comes from to Turkey, to Persian art and Ottoman art from the Uyghur people, from that land. That's like the most ancient version of it. From there, it also goes into Chinese art and becomes their decorative motif on clothing and tapestries and murals. And I even saw that cloud motif in the Ainu people, in the indigenous people of Japan, who perhaps might have once upon a time come from another place. So by following that, you can see how we're historically connected to each other, that there's not really a separation, like, and that I'm drawing it now and that I learned it from someone who learned it from someone. It's just a continuation of all that, all the artists, and if you feel connected to all the artists that came before you, where you're a caretaker of this symbol, this drawing.
That's a beautiful way to put it. A beautiful way to thank you. About a year ago in Berkeley, in November of 2023, you gave a lecture and it was called Generative AI, Race, Art, and Power. And then you wrote, and that sounds similar to what you were telling us earlier, the hype around generative AI has provoked both anxiety and enthusiasm. Now, another dimension of your practice, and I'm sure the audience has picked that up by now, is you have a satiric streak. You have a sense of a wit about you. And you created something called artificial life coach, which was to address the anxiety about AI. So would you tell us, here is the first page of your website about the artificial life coach. Would you tell us a little bit about you as an artificial life coacher?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so fear is, I think, a driving force behind AI because fear is used as a marketing tool to sell you more tools. If you don't use this tool, you're going to get left behind is one of the fear tactics. And the other one is these tools can get so advanced that they could destroy the world, which is also saying this tool is very powerful and it sells the tool to governments and people who want to control or use them for other ends. So all that fear in the air needs a counter. And I know no better counter than laughter. You know, when you have something very powerful, laughter can really take out a punch into it, you
Right.
know?
Jay, would you mind bringing up the artificial life coach slide again? Is that possible?
Yeah, so I
Very
pretend to be a life coach on the internet, on social media, but I life coach the algorithms, not people. So by humorously sort of pretending like in these tropes of being a guru, you know, and that's very trendy in Silicon Valley too. Everyone's going to a guru because they feel guilty perhaps for the things that they do and they want healing. And I'm providing that on the internet for the computers themselves. But I know I'm in this character of a deluded person. And in that delusion, I'm also making people laugh while I educate them about some of the harms. Because the
so
harms
this
are very real.
this is the performance art you were doing.
Yeah, it's online.
When you were in Northampton, Massachusetts, you're being a performance artist. You should have belonged to New York in the 1960s. You would have had a terrific time. But there was
That would have been
also,
my dream.
yeah, it was also in the speech, Generative AI, Race, Art, and Power. You were talking very legitimately to me about the inequities that are built into certain aspects of AI. Um, what what do you see? And we're going to come back to this in a minute. But what are you talk about fears? And is it one of your fears about inequities that are built into the exercise of it? Or am I just being a scaredy cat?
No, I mean, there's no way around it, and it's well researched. I used to just sort of have anxiety about it, but we know from evidence now, because it's been a while since I first started researching these things, that these tools are very biased, and they're already for many years now harming marginalized, struggling communities, and they harm them first. Because AI is not a new thing. Like you said, a lot of the math is from the 80s, right? The only difference was that we got some big data and then we got a lot of money pouring into it so that we could look at this data. So it feels like it's very fast and innovative. But what it really is that data is our past. And our past is full of white male supremacy, and that is integrated into the data. So when you train a computer on that data, it is learning those things. The training material is not fair. We're training generative AI tools like ChatGPT and other large language models, there's many now, on the internet. The internet is not the whole world. It is a very narrow slice and is made by certain people. It is made by people with access to computers. It collects a certain type of knowledge and says, this is what's knowledge. And now we hold it up as, hey, this is correct. So some of the problems we've had with it is, for example, have been egregious. Like people were using an AI tool in Florida to see whether or not people should get parole, in the recidivism system, in the criminal justice system. And the AI was used to judge and give a score to someone. Like you get 3 points if you're going to, are you likely to commit a crime again? And they look at that person's history. So unsurprisingly, it was wrong. It was wrong more than half of the time. And it was more wrong when it came to Black men than with white men, like at a significant amount. So it was just more likely what all that had happened was that they had trained the system to make the same racist judgments as the criminal justice system of Florida. But now it's a computer doing it, right? So it's harder to be like, it's racist, because we believe computers are neutral, but that is a false belief. That is an imaginary thing.
So we imagine they're neutral because we like to think there is some objective and neutral thing that will give us reality instead of fantasies or dreams or networks of error. But one thing, too, I've noticed about your work as an artist and also as a researcher is you believe in collaboration. You believe in that the whole becomes more radiant if it is more than the sum of its parts. And you've talked it, and I was just wondering, and you've also talked about it's a field that you learn from. And I was wondering if you would mind just giving us very, very quick sketches of 5 of the people that you've learned from, of the many, and that you have had at least mental collaborations with. Would you mind doing that?
No, I would love to. I think that all individuals are really a collaboration.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
these are 2 of my favorite people. You see Kathy O'Neill. She's got the kind of turquoise green hair. She's the author of a book called Weapons of Math Destruction, and she's a mathematician and data scientist. And she is also the person who taught me that context is very important for AI. You can't just make sort of any opinions. You really have to put the tool, be specific, and talk about in context. And she also recognized that as an artist, my input was very valuable for a data science team. And I actually work for her as an algorithmic auditor now
what does
for
that
her
mean?
consultancy.
What does that mean, an
Well,
algorithmic auditor?
you audit just like you would audit taxes. You audit the algorithms. You ask what could go wrong, who can be harmed, and you
Oh,
kind of like look through. And data scientists can have like tools that can, adjust things, but you still need, people who can think about the imagination of the potential of what could happen.
So this is another example of art working with, in this case, data science, right? Who is the next person in this?
This is Khadija Abdurrahman. She's the editor of Logic magazine, which is out of Colombia. And she changed how I thought about AI when I read a piece she wrote called The Moral Collapse of AI Ethics. It called in people more than calling out people in AI ethics, because corporate influence was really growing at the time and taking over the field and the academic field too. And the way she did it was so beautiful because it was critical, but it came from a place of love. And I think I learned a lot about that because it was this act of caretaking of the community for its best interests, and just like having that honesty to be able to like talk to people as a friend in order for them to do their best work.
That's interesting. So critique as a collaborative act.
Yeah, because it's
Then we
coming from
have,
a really good place. It's coming from a place of care for others. And I can see that in her work with the magazine too, because which I think everyone should subscribe to, Logic Magazine. And it's such an influential magazine because she's very good at curating thinkers and activists and putting their work into this context of technology.
and that piece that we were looking at, The Origin of Clouds,
Yes,
appeared
Matt.
in issue 19 of Logics, if I now we have just three other extraordinary people among the many that are part of this whirling world in which you live. Could we call up two more, please?
Dr. Ruha Benjamin, she teaches at Princeton, and I would recommend reading her book, Race After Technology, the abolitionist tools for the new Jim Code, because you can really get it's beautifully written. She's so eloquent in her writing, very poetic, but you can see how technology comes from and reenacts white supremacy. But I really enjoy her because I often end my talks with a quote from her because it's so hopeful. She says that we have to remember to imagine and craft the worlds we cannot live without, just as we dismantle the ones we cannot live within. Just so
Uh,
good. And
and
that's oh, go ahead.
yeah, it's just in the phrase. I want to make sure everybody knows it. Jim Code, playing off Jim Crow, but now Jim Code. So thank you, Dr. Benjamin. The next uh, the next part of this swirling world in which you live.
Meredith Broussard. She's has a journalist background. She teaches at NYU and writes books on how artificial intelligence is actually unintelligent. I met her at a roundtable 5 years ago, and I was just struck by how good she is at communicating science. There is no like gatekeeping. It is easy to understand. Everyone can learn AI. Everyone know you're already an expert if you have a background in your own life, because those tools are within your life. You're an expert of it. So she makes me think of like who is our audience, and my research shows that her work is so important because the biggest gap we have in AI is public education.
And didn't she also create the term techno chauvinism?
She did. Techno chauvinism.
Oh
That's
God.
exactly that kind of gatekeeping attitude where only us, you don't understand. We're the experts. Let us tell you how to do something. We know what's best.
I think a slight anti-authoritarian streak in you, perhaps. And the five, just of the many we could have been talking about, one more. And who
Oh,
is
I
this?
love Deb. Deb Raji, she is just doing her PhD while she's also in between meetings with Biden and Bill Gates because I think if there's only just one person to listen to about AI, I could only name one. I would name Deb because she's creating so much structure, like the intellectual foundation that's necessary to be able to govern these tools well. And she's coming from compassionate place, but she has all that intellectual rigor and academic background necessary to do things well. She's probably at the foremost scholar of the algorithmic auditing that's happening. And she leads that, and she's working with others and collecting a large group of people who are all in conversation together.
Thank you. As I said, as you know, this is only five of this world of investigation. And as you keep pointing out, investigation that also involves the arts and the imagination of something that might be different, as well as dismantling the imagination that you've been talking about, the imagination of AI as something that will create the perfect, orderly world. But you, Sherry, with all your projects, you created a space, an umbrella term called the Icarus Salon. Now, you, with your mischievous streak and your satiric streak, why did you use Icarus? He fell, he went too close to the sun, and you seem to be quite measured in your response to new developments. So why Icarus? Why are you working under the self-created Icarus Salon?
You know, it's actually on the nose. It's complicated. So I grew up in Izmir, ancient Smyrna, birthplace of Homer, perhaps. So we would always point to the sea, and Icarus was imprisoned in a tower, or Daedalus was imprisoned in a tower on the sea. So in the myth, which is used a lot by Silicon Valley, because they like the myth, they have it's symbolized like to not fly too close to the sun, you know, your wings might melt, but also don't fly too close to the water. Have some ambition because they might get wet, you know, so take the middle path for innovation. But I see Icarus in the lineage of the arts because that story has ignited the imaginations of artists and poets for so many centuries. And every time there's a new version of it, it's constantly transforming. You have Bruegel's Icarus, for example, the painting, where Icarus is, you can just see his feet sticking out of the water. And at the front of it, it's a man plowing the fields, the everyday man working in the fields. Like, what is the story here? There's a fisherman, a shepherd. The everyday people they are the center of the story, while the myth is in the background, right? So I really love that. But I also love that there's poems that come in after of
Right.
investigating the painting. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm also investigating that myth in some way and criticizing it and looking at all the other artists that came before that thought about it, incorporating it. And it's an umbrella term. It's a conceptual organization that can like shift whatever it needs to be. Sometimes it's a dinner salon, but sometimes it is a consultancy. Sometimes it is an art collective working with other artists. You know, it's just whatever it needs to be, it can be.
I see. So, but again, the poem I most love, of course, is the autumn poem
Mm.
about, as you described, the Bruegel painting. Icarus, his father imprisoned, and the boy goes too close to the sun. But I like the way you see the nuances of a myth is millennia old now. But within the salon, you're not working on a big project.
Mm.
This is your project. And it's called, in ways I'd love to have you explain, blood quantum. Jake, do you think we could see a picture that is a part of who is here? And what
Oh,
does this have to
that is
do with
my
your your big art
grandma.
project? Your grandma.
It's my grandma. Yeah, that's my grandmother. She was Hawaiian. And blood quantum is policy in Hawaii. Because 100 years ago, 'cause Hawaiians had already lost their lands and they were dying out. There used to be like nearly 1 million Hawaiians. And then it just got 100,000, right? 100 years ago. And they were wondering, like, how can we keep Hawaiians in Hawaii? How can we continue? So Prince Kuhio, he had some lands that he wanted to bequeath to the Hawaiian people, but the sugar plantations got involved and they lobbied against what would consider, like, how do we count who is a Hawaiian? And what ended up happening was that the rule became that you had to have 50% Hawaiian blood or more to be considered Hawaiian. And that is, of course, over time, it waters down. And that was intentional. You become less and less Hawaiian. And this goes against how Hawaiians identify being Hawaiian, Kanaka Maoli. To be a Kanaka Maoli, you have a genealogy that you learn. My cousin just this weekend taught me my genealogy chant, which is why I'm here. I'm researching my history. I didn't know there was a genealogy chant. But you learn through these ways that are relational and it's expansive. You can adopt people into your family. It is not reductive. And I saw in this a comparison to artificial intelligence, because when you get data and quantification, you are putting on this way of knowing that comes from outside of your community. This is how we know who we are, is from a birth certificate. And like, people, it's hard to find. Sometimes they're wrong. They're not as good as like asking your mom, like, where do I come from? So it's one way of knowing, the epistemics of it, one way of knowing over another. And I had this thought only this weekend in this research that AI is a missionary project of coming in and telling a people, this is how you know, this way, this is what knowledge is. It's putting one form of knowledge above another.
And how is this all going to work in your art project? You're in the middle of it now, of Blood Quantum. Is it going to be an installation? Is it going to be a video? Is it going to be a performance piece? Is it going to be paintings? All of the above? How do you?
That's so big. It's all of the above, because I'm going to be working on this for several years. I'm going to make it a triptych. And my first one will be where I'm looking for my identity. Who am I? And I'm going to show bureaucracy, which is always fun for like conceptual art, and how mired it is. And I'm going to do that with a website of documentation where you can go and learn about these different forms of knowledge. And then I'm going to do a video piece that you can show in galleries that will work with my family history, that will also be a critique of AI and colonialism and how they are together. And then it will unfold into a third piece, which I hope it will be site specific and take place in Hawaii, where I'm going to make sculptures like hauntings in various locations. I saw these beautiful trees here that are, like those monkey pod trees that are just drooping, and they're huge, huge trees. And I want to become my family and become myself in them like a ghost, and do little hauntings and put little pamphlets around town where you can scan a QR code and it takes you on a sort of like a scavenger hunt. And if you hold your phone up, it'll be like an augmented reality. You'll see the video of me only at that location, haunting that tree and telling a alternative story to the one that tourists normally see.
You're right, it is a very big project.
Multiple years.
We have talked a little bit about how do artists live? How do you, this multi-year project, transdisciplinary, place specific, but with video that can travel any place. How do you fund this years of work in the Icarus Salon? Is this grants? I mean, how do you live?
I live off of grants. It is not an easy living. I think most artists struggle with making a living and or selling their art as well. But I'm no longer making items that I can sell that are individually owned, because I'm working with like a collective consciousness with groups of people. And I don't want the work to be in the art world. I want it to be living outside. And even this, when we're doing an interview, I consider it as part of the artwork that I'm doing, of reaching out and connecting with people and educating them and bringing them into a different way of thinking about these tools.
So as an artist, it is something you live in your everyday life. I mean, everything you do, and at one point you've talked about how democratic art can be,
Mhm.
but everything you do is a part of an art project and drawing on everyday life and giving back to everyday life. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, I believe that everyone is an artist and everything is art. And I don't mean that in a kind of like trite way. Joseph Beuys, he had said that everything was everyone was an artist, but he said had the potential to be an artist. And not everyone has the potential. You need free time, you need the resources, you need to have that recognition. And I say, without that even, you can be considered an artist. Like every time you put something new in the world, it's an act of creation of something that wasn't there. And that's not to say that the training, the skills, the education that people have to be artists are not significant. Not everyone's a good artist, like everyone has
No,
potential. But I want it to be sort of like something that is equitable as art as cultural labor. And we are all creating part of culture. We're all the makers of that. We all have our stakeholders in culture making.
and may it be a culture that has the kindness and the compassion that you talked about before and some of the people that you think with, because they're also, as you know, evil cultures and destructive cultures. I guess I'm thinking too much about the election, so forgive me.
Mm.
Um, Before we go to the questions, I would just be delighted if you would read from a poem that you love and see as a part of this historical chain. If you would read something and that, when we talked about this before, that fits with the origin of clouds.
Mhm.
So if you wouldn't mind, I think you want to read something from the poet Rumi, the 13th century mystical poet.
Yeah, we call him Mevlana in Turkey. He's on the money. But he's a Persian poet, and
Yeah,
poetry is so important in these cultures. That you speak in poetry. There's no regular word, everything is poetic. And this poem inspired the Clouds piece that was in Logic magazine. That's a self-portrait of me with birds growing out of my head. And those birds are all people who helped me with the piece. Each one is a friend. Some of them got to pick what birds they were going to be because there is no individual uh, imagination. It is only everything is completely collective. You're just a sum of all the people that have brought you into being that you've learned from. So this poem is from the Masnavi, book 4. And I translated it from the Turkish version because I based the art on the Turkish version and not the Persian. But he says, there are two kinds of intelligence. The first is the kind you acquire, like a child in school. You learn from books, teachers, thinking, memory, concepts, and new sciences. Your mind can grow greater than others, but you grow tired from the weight of what you acquire. The second intelligence is by the grace of God. Its source is in your soul. When the fountain of knowledge gushes out from the bosom, its source cannot stagnate. It cannot get old or change color. While the acquired mind is like a stream flowing from outside into the house. If there's an obstacle in the way, the water stops. Look for the spring within yourself.
thank you. The spring within yourself, but still realize from everything you have said so eloquently that the spring is really a river that's been flowing. It
Mm-hmm.
is your spring within you, but never forget what came before. And the imagination this is what I'm learning from you. The imagination is not singular.
Mm-hmm.
The imagination springs from all of us. And when we create life or art, we draw on all this and feel we should feel gratitude
Mhm.
for all of those who have helped us, the birds that are flying towards the cloud. So thank you so very much.
Mhm.
We have questions already. Here's one. Um, do you have here? Hold on, just let me expand here. And let me go to the chat here. Um, this is about a campus. Do you have thoughts on chat GPT on campus and students writing, its relationship to learning now?
Mhm.
If you were back in college, but you look around, you see, you observe, you take in. What do you think?
This is a big question because ChatGPT being used in school was one of the primary reasons it became so popularized and well known because students are using it and they're all using it from really small ones all the way through college. And there's a lot of dialogue at universities on how to handle that. Are students going to be learning as well if they're using these tools? They're like, write me an essay, answer this question, because you don't have to do the research as well. So there's some people trying to ban it, and they are using tools that can like detect Chat GPT.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say very, very clearly, those tools don't work. And they unfairly will point out a student's work as being AI generated, especially if it's like by a student who speaks English, perhaps with a dialect or is an immigrant. Those little flaws will make it stick out more as being AI generated, even if it's not. So those tools don't work, and do not use them for all universities. They don't work. And the important thing is unfairly that teachers have to adapt around these tools. They're not getting paid extra to suddenly redo their syllabus in order to work with this. I recommend a website called aipedagogy.org. It's out of Harvard, created by an artist.
Is that true?
Yeah, it is true. Yeah, it's there's a wonderful art program called Meta Lab at Harvard, and it teaches you how to be a teacher in this new world. And it has all these exercises you can do with your students that has them use the tool to work with their, to help them with their work, but also see how the tool fails and learn about it so that they're not dependent on it and they know that it's not correct.
Um, thank you. That, um, well, here's one that I'm glad the question is there because I wanted to get to it in our regular time. What other projects are you working on? And what is your work process like? It's so two related questions. What are you working, what other projects, and what is your process like? Since you go in so many different directions.
I do. I have so many things usually. I can get more done when I pile it on than just doing one thing when I'll forget. But
Say that again.
oh, if I'm very, very busy and have a lot of balls, I can work on all of it and I have this clarity of thinking, especially if I'm a little tired. But if I only have one thing, I'll forget it. I'll pick up, I stay busy with other stuff if I only have a little work to do. So I like being busy. But currently, I'm working with Global Voices, which is also a nonprofit that came out of Harvard. We are doing a project on data narratives where we have researchers in countries that have had different histories with authoritarianism. So we're looking at Turkey, my home country, and Brazil, my research assistance country, and Sudan, El Salvador, and India. And we're looking at data at these places because AI is going to be so big and authoritarian control sees the value of AI because AI is a type of surveillance and it gives visibility. And visibility is is once you can see something, you can move things around. So I thought, well, we should understand what it's like in these countries, what people think about AI and data now, because then you can sort of understand what's going to happen and where things will go a little bit better, and you can prepare for it better. So we're also going to be putting out a volume of poetry from these countries, asking poets and artists to contribute and write about data and AI. Because a lot of policies are coming from the United States because we have the tech companies and they influence a lot of decision making, even in the EU as well. That's being so, um, you know,
Controversial.
forefront
Yeah, yeah.
with governance and controversial. Um, so what happens in the United States with the AI ends up happening all over the world, which is unfair because everyone has these are different places, and even in the different place, you have different ways of thinking. So it's important to have visibility on how other people feel and what other people are thinking and what they're imagining about AI.
So you're doing, as I understand it, again, this is a collaborative project. There are about 7 of you working on this project,
Yeah.
and you're bringing together, trying to find out what people are thinking and feeling, data now, data, but you're also, you want to have a volume of poetry and art. Of how is this, is if I understood this project correctly?
Yeah, you can't capture because I'm new to academia. It was not my area of study. I'm an artist. And the more I stay like work on these sort of more academic research projects, I feel like there's always a bit missing, things you cannot capture that art captures, that poetry captures, reading between the lines, because stuff that doesn't need a citation, where you can just talk about the emotional quality and or the things that you can connect with, like a research paper isn't about forming a relationship, but when you read a poem, you're in relationship because that is what art is at the end of the day for me. It is relational. It's this and that, and art can be in the middle, connecting the two, whatever it is. It could be from the artist to another person, between you and the environment, it's all sorts of things, but it's relational. And when you have poetry or art be part of a research project, the audience, the reader, they become in a relationship to it, and it doesn't just inform them like that knowledge you learn at school. You are part of this fountain. You get invited in.
In doing your research, what have you found doing your research as an artist or part of a collaborative project? What has surprised you the most recently? That, here you are, you're out in the world, you see a lot of things, you do a lot of things, but what has taken you by surprise? Everything? Nothing?
You know, just coincidences. I have found that when you are working for in a way of service, which I'm trying to do and working on getting better at, that a lot of serendipity happens that seems so coincidental. Like coming to Hawaii recently, I wanted to do all this genealogy research, and I don't even have to work on it because all the knowledge I need just keeps arriving. All these coincidences keep arriving. Like my cousin told me that I need to stop looking if it's not working out, that to only go in the direction that the knowledge wants me to go, which sounds kind of woo to me, but he's right. Like you go with the flow of things. And he told me that just at the exact moment that I needed to hear it, because I was like trying to get an interview with some scholar here who wasn't emailing me back. And I was like, please email me back. And then it's just right at the moment I needed to hear it. I heard, okay, let go of that path, go over here. And then I discovered, I ended up going to a bookstore where I accidentally bought 12 books, which is too many for me to take home in a luggage. But it was a book of native books. It was a bookstore for just like indigenous Hawaiian work. And I found this book on Mo'oku Auhau, which is genealogy, but that is a methodology of learning. And that just blew my mind apart because I was stunned that the thread I was pulling at, coincidentally, like just genealogy and knowing who you are, isn't genealogy just. It's not just about your family. It is a methodology for knowledge and seeing the world. That this lineage is an entire knowledge repository of the environment and thinking and just boom, you know. And it comes from the words of that come from the tail of a lizard. Mo Mo'o is a lizard, and it means segmented. Those are sections. And to follow the section, to follow the lizard tail of from its tail all the way to its body. And that is how they learn here. And that was I intuitively was going to that. So it just blew my mind.
So here you live in a world of wonder. You and you see it often as this magical place full of surprises. How do you balance that with the satirist and the person who sees things as funny and and does that kind of the artificial life coach?
Mhm.
Which I recommend that people go up because it really is it's a hoot to see. It really is. So how do you balance these sensibilities, these two sensibilities? Are they ever at war with each other?
Oh,
The
they're
capacity.
all united. I live in a world of wonder because my husband is a magician and he brings that moment of wonder all the time, every day, right? And in my work, art, I think, is, or in everyone's work, art, those moments of creation are moments of wonder where something exists where it didn't exist before, and you're like, wow. And that humor, that is a counterpoint to all this fear. Because the power of authoritarians that we were talking about is being ruling with fear. And laughing and having love and having wonder is a counter narrative to that fear that is much more powerful. You know, like you could fear will make you, you know, run away from fire, but love and humor and relationships, that will make you run into it to save the life of someone you love. You know, it's just a much stronger force. And so I just think of all of those things as it's just all one. It's a life raft humor, you know. It's not just a counter, it's how you survive.
Were you funny in college with your with your running around doing your performance art?
Yeah, I ran for
Were you
student body
considered a
president
celebrity?
once.
What? You what?
I
Say
ran
that.
for student body president once as like an art
Okay.
project. And I had a picture of me in platform shoes and it said, "This is my platform." It was pretty funny.
It
Make
is
the
amusing.
wrong choice.
I'm laughing because I'm also laughing because people who knew me in college, I was the student body president. And I don't think I was ever very funny. I had to lead a dance around a maypole. But I love the fact that you had a send-up campaign to run for student body president. I think that is a wonderful note to
Oh,
end on. Is this combination of wit and your sense of humor, your sense of love, your sense of creativity, and would you just, since our theme is radical imagination, and clearly your imagination is flying and on fire much of the time. You're seeing many things, different things, and wonder, comedy. So your imagination is on fire. How do we nurture the imagination?
I think imagination is a fountain. It's really free flowing. The trick is really discernment. We imagine a lot of things constantly all day. Like we have to pick one and act on it. We have to put it into the world. That's when it exists because trapped up here, the imagination, it's not in the world. It has to become. And it's really important to like sit and go slow and be like, okay, here's all the things I'm thinking of. And pick one. You'll never know if it's the right one. You just jump in the pool. You're like this one and you do it.
And in the pool, and humor will be your life raft, right?
Because it's hard out there. You have to be able to laugh. It will carry you up.
Sherry, Şerife Wong, thank you so much for being with us. You've brought us such vitality and insights. And I think everyone who has heard you has learned from you and has enjoyed you, which I think is also a very, very good thing. I am grateful to you for your time and for all that you have said to us. I think we all wish you well on Blood Quantum and all your other projects, and may the Icarus Salon flourish. But Sherry, please, you may fly too close to the sun in your imagination, but stay with us. Please stay with us. Don't fall into the water without a life raft, please. Continue to be with us in the Icarus Salon. Now, to our audience who's been with us today, again, I'm sure you join with me in thanking Sherry. And I also want to thank Jay DeLeon, our producer. The next Skirball tape will be November 14th, 2 p.m. with the visual artist Emily Barker. So Sherry, join with me in wishing everybody a happy fall or a happy spring if you are in another hemisphere, another part of the world. And if you are here in the northern climes, the latitudes, right? Not longitudes, the northern latitudes. If you're in the northern latitudes, have a happy fall with no tricks, unless they're humorous, and many treats. Şerife Wong, thank you so much for your reading, for your work, for your imagination, for your versatility, and for your capacity for magic, gratitude, and hard work, perseverance. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. We'll see you again, but again, our thanks and our every good wish for all your work to Şerife Wong, Sherry Wong, and the Icarus Salon. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.